What you just got done watching is a perfect example of the most important element in all of self-defense. Because it doesn't really matter how powerful your punches are or how good your armbar is or how fast you can draw and fire a sidearm. At the end of the day, there's only one element that separates victim from victimizer, from going home or not. And that element is the element of surprise. All right, it was funny enough the first time. Now, we've all seen the videos of professional fighters getting into fights at weigh-ins, being caught totally off guard and looking like they've never thrown a punch in their life. But why is that? Is being surprised really that big of a game changer? At the risk of talking down to you, let's define surprise. A quick Googling says surprise is defined as an unexpected or astonishing event, fact, or thing. Put through the lens of combat self-defense, and we have an unexpected or an astonishing event, fact, or thing with the intent of disrupting a person's mindset. Think about it like this. You clicked on this video to watch my beautiful face wax poetic about martial arts. And for the next 15-ish minutes, that's what you're expecting to happen. If, however, 6 minutes in, I break into a saxophone cover of the Rubber Band Man, you'd rightfully take a few seconds to ask yourself what the hell is happening before you decide to act and watch something else. And that moment's hesitation between processing what's happening and deciding what to do as a result of what's happening is what we'd call surprise. And in this context, it doesn't really matter. You waste a few seconds of your time, sure, but no one gets hurt. But now let's say instead that you're into said saxophone solo. You're watching the video on your phone, walking down the street, having a grand old time, when all of a sudden, wham! Someone punches you right in between the eyes. Now, that moment's hesitation between what the hell is happening and deciding to act is critical. This is what's known as disrupting someone's OODA loop. For those who aren't familiar, OODA loop is a cutesy acronym which describes the process of observing something, in this case being randomly punched while you're walking down the street, orienting yourself to that thing, this person is punching me and presumably wants to keep punching me, deciding to do something about that something, I should put my hands up and get ready to defend myself, and finally acting on that decision. Now we're fighting. So self-defense is all about you, the defender, going from observation to action as quickly as possible, and your attacker making sure that transition never happens. But this isn't just about being distracted or not paying attention to your surroundings. This is about our nervous system not being great at handling sudden change to the status quo. We go through our day-to-day lives expecting things to play out a certain way. We expect to wake up in the morning, brush our teeth, go to work, come home, watch and subscribe to Combat Self-Defense. We don't expect to get randomly sucker punched, or mugged, or sexually assaulted. So when and if those things do happen, it can take our brains a very long time to reconcile the fact that things aren't going according to plan.
Upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos. I'm an agent of chaos.
This should go without saying, but I need the watch time, so I'm gonna say it anyway. But combat sports training is about preparing for one specific event. Whether you have a fight on the calendar or not, you are training as though you do. You're training to operate under a certain set of rules about how and when you're going to fight. Usually, we're talking about 1 to 10-minute rounds between you and another person about your size with a referee in the middle to enforce safety and protocol. So combat sports is about preparing for one specific event, whereas self-defense training is about being prepared for a range of events. You have to be ready to deal with hand-to-hand combat, combat involving weapons, combat where he has a weapon and you don't, fighting in a car, fighting in the rain, and a whole bunch of other things that might not ever actually happen. Not to mention, there's a whole bunch of other variables and a lot more ambiguity, so self-defense training requires a lot more than just knowing how to fight. But nobody cares about first aid and emergency prepping here, so we talk about the punchy-kicky. But even with all that in mind, the real difference between combat sports and self-defense training is again the element of surprise. Because here's the thing, you can't be ready for everything all the time. It doesn't matter if your attacker throws a left hook, or grabs you from behind, or flings a flaming bag of poopy at you. If you're not ready for it, you're already losing. Our brains are designed to create routines and discard things that we deem unimportant. And every once in a while, we discard important information about our own safety. As a test of this theory, can you tell me, how many times have the gloves in my background moved in this video? Comment down below if you know. No cheating, I'm watching. Speaking of being surprised, I bet you weren't expecting an ad read right now. Now, if you were like me, after a long day of training and weightlifting, your body gets pretty banged up and it can be difficult to find the right recovery tools. And while we can ignore it for a while, eventually this soreness and tightness can evolve into full-blown injury, so it's important to address it right away. Enter the D6 Pro massage gun from Bob and Brad. Bob and Brad are the two most famous physical therapists on the internet and have a channel I've been subscribed to for years thanks to their expert PT advice. So, when Bob and Brad offered to send me one of their personally designed products, I jumped at the opportunity. Listen, sponsorship notwithstanding, I do genuinely believe in this product and would recommend it no matter what. Guys, the D6 Pro is easily the best massage gun I've ever used. It comes with an ergonomic multi-grip design and an adjustable arm so you can really get into those hard to reach places. It has 180 minutes of continuous use in its rechargeable battery life, different modes so you can customize your experience, and 7 different heads to really hit the trigger points from different angles. My favorite head is the shark fin looking guy, which I use to dig into my traps and forearms after a hard day of training and holding pads. The D6 has adjustable speed starting at 1500 RPM, which is what I recommend starting at. But I usually end up anywhere between 19 and 2100 to really get some work in. The brave among you may go as high as 2500, but I'm not there yet. Recovery is important, not just for finding trigger points and dealing with injuries after training, but also general wear and tear on the body. Like I said, I hit the traps and forearms after almost every workout session, but I've also taken to getting the soles of my feet and my quads, places that aren't necessarily sore from a workout, but do develop tension from my day-to-day life. Guys, it's important to take care of your body because you only get one, and the D6 Pro massage gun from Bob and Brad makes that job so much easier. If you want to pick one up for yourself, there is a link down in my description. Full disclosure, I get a little commission from your purchase, so helping you helps me, helps the channel. With all that being said, let's get back to the video. Generally speaking, when you talk to people who have been the victims of violent assault, why they didn't defend themselves, they'll give you one of two answers. Number one, I couldn't think of what to do and I just froze. Or number two, I knew I had to do something, but I couldn't actually make myself do it. In the first case, we're dealing with someone who had all the information about what was happening to them, but whose fear clouded their minds so much that they couldn't see how to help themselves. So they didn't. But in the second case, we have someone who is processing the information, but who can't handle the adrenal dump happening in their body, making them functionally useless. In either case, the solution is the same. Both people need to be trained in how to make quick decisions in high stress environments. Key word here being trained, because this is a skill like any other. You only get better at it if you study and practice. So the simplest way to do this is with sparring. Something like Jiu-Jitsu, where rolling is literally an exercise in fast-paced decision-making, can be a great way to introduce somebody who freezes what the benefits are of instead choosing to act. But this only serves as an introduction to high-stress decision-making. Because as we've already established, and my comment section is no doubt currently word vomiting, Jiu-Jitsu is only a sport. Your opponent isn't gonna break out a knife, his friends aren't gonna jump in to help him, and you walk in there knowing you're going to fight. Now yes, multiple attacker sparring and weapon sparring are great, but these are really more complications than they are surprises. Surprise is one of the hardest things to train for because by nature of the fact that you are training, you can't really be all that surprised by anything that happens to you. Which is why I'm a big fan of role-playing games.
Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt!
No, not like that.
Whoa, 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 man.
Give me
What's
money,
up?
that's all I want.
Like, what do you want?
Just money.
No, not like that either. And actually, while we're talking about it, does anybody actually see a benefit to this kind of training? I've taken dozens of self-defense courses like this over the years, and they almost never yield the results people think they will. Usually, you'll get people giggling and muttering a few aggressive words to each other while their instructor stands in the corner feeling accomplished. There is a time and a place for this style of role-playing, but that time isn't most of the.
Hey man, that's gonna be cool.
No, when I say role-playing games, I'm emphasizing the games part of that phrase. Games where the only real way to win is to not get overwhelmed. When people are given a goal, something that they can win, rather than a technique to replicate, they will come up with much more unique and much more realistic to them ways to achieve said goal. Because there's more than just one way to react to a stressor, and it's time as martial arts instructors that we address that. Historically, we've been taught that the only two ways to react to stress are fight or flight. And that's true, but there's also fawning, which is where you try to appease your attacker in the hopes of getting them to leave you alone, and freezing, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's important to note that no one reaction is necessarily better than the other, but as a martial arts instructor, it's my job to teach you that at the very least, you don't freeze. Now, too often, people conflate martial arts training with self-defense training. And while martial arts plays a role in self-defense, it's really the last step in that process. And there are plenty of other steps beforehand that you need to be practicing. These steps are, in order, avoidance, de-escalation, preemption, and finally, yes, fighting. Avoidance is exactly what it sounds like. Circumventing dangerous situations altogether by not being there in the first place. This is hands down the best self-defense, but not always one you can be aware of. The next step is going to be de-escalation, which is where you know a situation could turn dangerous, so you instead use your words to bring the situation back down under control. This is where verbal judo and a sense of humor really come in handy. Moving on from that, we have preemption. This is where a situation is just about to turn dangerous. Someone is just about to assault you, and you decide to flip the script and surprise them instead. Legally, this is kind of a gray area because depending on where you live, you're not actually allowed to throw the first strike. But sometimes, if you're aware that someone's gonna hurt you, you need to be proactive and take the fight to them. Also, this is the realm where any martial arts technique will work because, like I've established before, if your opponent doesn't know you're actually fighting, you can get away with doing all the Kempo you want. Now, the last step in self-defense is the actual fighting part of it. This is where all the steps beforehand were totally exhausted and your attacker got the surprise on you. Now, whereas before it didn't matter if you actually knew how to fight, here, everything you've been training actually better be effective. So this is the progression of self-defense: avoidance, de-escalation, preemption, and finally fighting. But the problem is, in this situation, as I've laid it out, we're talking about street fighting and not self-defense. Because if you're in a situation that you're aware you might have to get in a fight, that's a situation you could easily walk away from. The more likely scenario is that your attacker is using the element of surprise on you. Now, this could be the mythical holy grail that martial artists talk about, where the gang of ruffians jump out of the shadows to assault you, or it could be somebody cornering you as you walk to your car and threatening you at gunpoint, or it could be as subtle as going out for drinks with someone you trust, and by the end of the night, that person turns into someone you can't trust. 3 different scenarios with one common denominator. Your attacker is trying to use the element of surprise to get the drop on you. And in almost none of those 3 scenarios is fight training going to be enough to prepare you. So martial arts is purely combat focused, and self-defense is an entirely different beast, right? Yes, kind of, no, not really, and not necessarily. Because the first time you get put in a rear naked choke is terrifying. The first time your sparring partner punches you in the nose is shocking. And finding out that all the karate you've been doing in your mom's basement didn't teach you shit about fighting is earth-shattering. But ultimately, what is martial arts if not dealing with those horrible realizations and pressing on anyway? So yes, to some degree, martial arts training does prepare you to deal with the unexpected, but it's not nearly enough. Your instructor needs to know about martial arts, yes, but also needs to know about psychology, about social conditioning, about stress response, about hormone dumps, and how this cocktail will affect your reaction in a violent situation. Knowing how to throw a roundhouse kick is important, sure, but knowing how to react and not freeze is important-er. Bottom line, surprise is the most important element of self-defense and the hardest part to train for. It doesn't matter if you're the best trained fighter in the world or how many red pieces of tape are on your black belt. If your training didn't prepare you for dealing with the unexpected, your fight record and your black belt means absolutely 0.
Well, Mr. Starker, I think you have underestimated me and the element of surprise!
But anyways, you guys, that's my musing on the element of surprise and the role it plays in self-defense. Do you agree? Is this something we've been under-training, or is fight training more than enough? Let me know down in the comments. With all that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you learned something. If you did, please make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. And if you're looking for ways to support the channel, pick up the D6 Pro massage gun from Bob and Brad, as well as using code COMBATSD for 10% off your X Martial order. X Martial is a brand new sponsor and has been providing some of the best martial arts apparel and training gear on the planet. Anyways, with all that being said, this has been Rob from Combat Self-Defense. I want to thank you for all the hard work. Thank you for hard work yet to be done, and